Hey guys, and welcome to Monifactory Progression Log 17. I don't think I've gotten as much stuff done this week, but there are some interesting points to make. First off, over the last week, I did a little bit of streaming. I tried that for the first time, and that was pretty good. If you guys tuned in, thank you. I had a good time. I hope you did too. Going forward, I will probably stream more. Uh, however, I don't really have a schedule, nor do I really intend to do a schedule. I will stream whenever I feel like streaming because it's just a thing I want to do when I'm having fun. Um, Also because I don't have a schedule I play Minecraft on, especially in the most recent weeks. Monty Factory's endgame in the current version of the pack we're playing in is atrocious, unfortunately. I may actually update to 12.4 as so the endgame won't be so fucking ridiculous in terms of microminer expenditures, but we'll see. Anyway, if you are interested in catching streams, uh, I will at least try to update people at least an hour or so before. Mostly in my Discord server, since you'd get a ping for that. I will try and remember to do a community post on the YouTube page. That being said, I don't know if you guys get notifications for that. The other thing is I stream both to YouTube and to Twitch with some restream tool. However, Twitch seems to be the superior streaming option in terms of it has a much shorter delay than YouTube does. I don't know why. It just be like that, I guess. Anyway, I guess we might as well go ahead and get started with this week. The last week or so has mostly been about once again fixing the microminers, and I haven't gotten on in a couple of days, and it seems like it's still mostly working. Um, I literally just got on moments ago, and we have all of the tier 10s. It looks like it's not making any tier 11s because we are out of UHP IC waivers. Well, that's something else I have to go fix. Like over the last 2-3 weeks at this point, it's mostly just been running around, figuring out what the automatic microminers have broken recently and fixing that. And it seems like it's mostly fixed at this point. I've patched most of the problems with it as well as made some changes. We'll go ahead and talk about some of the changes over here on the micro miners. So one thing to note is before we were doing Warden Hearts, there are two recipes for Warden Hearts. You have this one in the Advanced Micro Projector 2, and then you have one in the Hyperbolic Microverse Projector. And we were doing this recipe for Hadal Shards and Warden Hearts. The problem is this takes two tier 9 miners in order to do one of these recipes, because Corrupted Universe data takes one to actually make, as well as the Shattered Universe data takes another tier 9 miner. So this also eats a tier 4 as well, just for the Stellar Creation data. In the Hyperbolic, it's 4 stacks, which requires UHV sensors and a data model. So this was an exceptionally expensive recipe for just 64 hearts. Though the Hadal shards were nice, we weren't using them. We weren't using nearly as many Hadal shards as we were using Warden hearts. As you use Warden hearts in the assembly line for the ultimate material, which you use an absolute ridiculous amount of, by the way. I would set this up on passive as soon as you can, and then just let it run forever. Like give it like a infinite buffer, or like give it a drawer with like 4 stainless upgrades, and just run it forever. Never have it stop running, because you do need ridiculous amounts of ultimate material going into late game. It's really quite insane. This is by far our number one expenditure for Warden Hearts, and probably for microminers in general as well. It helps a lot that we're not using this expensive recipe, and we actually swapped to this one, as this one is much cheaper. It just requires a single tier 7, a deep dark data we make through a loot fabricator, so this is like not nearly as expensive. The dilithium also, we have probably lots of that. Quantum flux. That gets made very cheaply as well. So this was a much better recipe, and even though you do get more Warden Hearts and you get the Hadal Shards from the other one, it just isn't worth running the other recipe for just Warden Hearts. Right now it only runs whenever we need Hadal Shards, which is more than enough, which is exactly what it's for. And when we get, the excess Warden Hearts as a byproduct of that, that's great, but it's not the main point of this recipe anymore. This recipe is just going to be used for Hadal Shards, because a stack of Warden Hearts is not as impactful as a stack of Hadal Shards, if that makes sense. They are not equivalent, especially since this is just half of that in general. It also provides us some diamonds, which we use a lot of for activated netherite. We actually chew through a ridiculous amount of diamonds. All right, so with that recipe switched over, we've been doing a lot better. I noticed that that was probably our number one pain point for microminers, just because of how many tier 9s it was eating for that, and those are fairly pretty ridiculously expensive in the grand scheme of things, even for us. Mostly relying on, like, here we can take a look on, I believe it was the universal navigators was the most expensive part. The universal navigators are quite expensive. The Hadal warp engines themselves aren't that bad. Most of the stuff we already have on passive, or all of these things we actually have on passive. Yeah, all of this stuff we have on passive. So the warp engines themselves and the warp cores themselves aren't really that bad. It's mostly the universal navigator that's the expensive part, and this requires UV sensors and UV robot arms and UHV sensors. So these are not cheap. The platings themselves aren't even that bad either. They're pretty cheap in the grand scheme of things as well. So this is just flux infused electrum plates, which we have tanked, so those are free. Flux infused gems, which is redstone and diamonds, and we have liquid redstone tanked, so it's just diamonds, which are done through H and N mostly. Anyway, moving forward into this one, I added actually another microminer mission to the regular advanced projector. One thing that we had actually happen twice over the week was we ran out of redstone. We've had a lot of redstone for most of the pack, and I just kind of figured we were gonna be good enough forever, especially since we had tanked liquid redstone. The problem with attempting to downcraft from redstone blocks to redstone dust is we'd have to. The problems I'm having with the molecular assemblers um, over here is that if you get one recipe that just chews through a bunch of resources and it really really hauls ass in terms of crafting speed, it will kind of block up the rest of the molecular assemblers from running because these laser nodes can only run so fast. I set them to every 3 ticks instead of 1 tick because at 1 tick they tick like madmen, and we are kind of in like the below 20 TPS for probably about half the runtime at this stage. It depends on how often I restart the server, so I may actually have to turn automatic restarts back on. We had automatic restarts on for the longest for pretty much the entire time during ATM9. However, it hasn't been like that for Monifactory, but that may have to change. Anyway, so I don't really want, especially with how much redstone we use throughout the base, especially for the primal mana, which is where it got all consumed. I don't think it would be a particularly great idea to try and downcraft from with a molecular assembler passively unless I had a dedicated molecular assembler somewhere. And even then, I'm not particularly sure it's worth it to downcraft from that. So instead what we do is I added a new microminer, and you actually get dense ores from this. And uh, when it comes to dense ores, I didn't really think we'd have any more of them, but this was actually pretty useful stuff. We were running microminers over redstone, not only for redstone, but while processing redstone, you get a decent chance at rare earth. And you use cadmium in Eltsline, and we had burned through all of our cadmium at one point or another. So we weren't making any more Elts for that either. Uh, Now, however, we have tons and tons of cadmium. We were also very low on lanthanum as well. That's another note because this does get used in making the skulk bioalloy stuff. It gets used in one of the the recipes or whatever. So this was something else. So this was a good reason or a good thing to do for multiple reasons. We got redstone, we got diamonds, we got rare earth, which was useful for multiple materials. We do this through this tier 4 microminer mission. You get coal, emeralds, redstone, diamonds, and lapis. The lapis, coal, and emeralds are kind of okay. The emeralds are nice because we do use those for I think they believe they get used in the crystal chips. I believe you need the plates for, yes. In an EBF, you use olivine plates or emerald plates, and we use emerald plates because originally we were making that through the Enderman models. However, we still do, but it does mean we have a little bit of an extra source of emeralds as needed. And it looks like we are very, very good on emeralds. So that was very useful for a bunch of different things, and that's what I've been mostly doing over the last week, has just been fiddling with microminers. And I really wish they weren't so expensive, and it's really good. I've mentioned this before over the streams, and I've probably mentioned this before in a video. I really like the idea of the microminer rework. I don't think it would really break too many things for us, especially since we don't use EU-P2P, since the big things have, dot 12 or whatever, the 12 version of Monifactory was specifically the EU-P2P nerf. Like it got like a much higher tax cost in terms of normal mode and hard mode, and or maybe it just straight up removed through hard mode and expert mode. I don't know. I don't remember. Anyway, so we weren't really affected too much in negative ways by dot 12. I do know that there's a microminer rework. Oh, I mean also it removes tank, which is seems like it would be a big one, but we do have a ridiculous amount of infinity cell bases, and it doesn't remove the tanks you already have. It just removes the ability to make more of them. So we have an absolute monstrous amount of them, more than we'd ever use, probably more than there are fluids in the game at this point. That we, more fluids than there are or more cell bases than there are fluids in the game, and certainly more than there are fluids we haven't tanked at one point or another. So I'm not really that concerned about running out of quantum, infinity tanks if we update to dot 12. So I may go ahead and do that just so I don't actually have to, spend so many resources on microminers. On the other hand, we have spent months preparing for passive microminers. And updating to dot 12 would kind of throw a lot of that out the window and means I'd tear up large portions of the base. I'm not exactly sure of the recipes, because how it works is you get the microminers, and the microminers don't get consumed, but you give them mining kits, and those are consumed, and they're much cheaper. So I don't think like I'd have to tear out large portions of the base in terms of passive assembly lines. I guess we can actually go take a look at the assembly lines, since that was like the biggest change, I think. We started stacking them because we needed lots and lots. We needed so many more assembly lines for lots of passive processes, and I did not really want to build another area, and I didn't really want to extend this area out anymore just because of how far away it is from the rest of the base. I don't really like how large this area is compared to most of the other base. It feels very lawn basey to me. It's not, a lawn base because it's, nice and stuff, and it does have like staircases and things. But I don't really like how large this area is getting. So I kind of cut off the expansion, and I think from here on out, should we need more assembly lines, we're just going to stack them up until we're done. So in terms of things that we added on passive over the last week, I don't know if we had the energy modules on passive last week. Uh, However, we did. I also added energy clusters for sure a couple days ago. We have UEV electric pistons. We have UEV electric motors. We obviously don't have them right now because what is missing? Uh, you just aren't turning on, and that greatly concerns me. I don't know. Working disabled. Oh, you got turned off. Oh, someone turned you off. Okay. Um, yeah. So we put all the UEV electric motors on passive, UEV electric pistons on passive. I bet this one's been turned off too. Nope. Oh, it just doesn't have any motors. We also put UV field generators on passive. I ended up breaking down the matter, just breaking down and doing the matter processor supercomputer and the matter processor mainframes on passive. We did actually manage to get dimensionals. I finally just went ahead and did them. However, dimensionals are really quite expensive. And the reason they are expensive is their holmium cost. To make the dimensional processing units requires holmium foil, and then the dimensional processor itself requires more holmium wire, as well as complex SMD components, which are even more holmium on top of that. It's pretty good in terms of how much holmium you spend and how many circuits you get. The problem with attempting to use holmium in our dimensional circuits and then using dimensionals for everything is if we run out of holmium, we run out of the ability to make dimensionals, which means we can no longer make T11s passively to actually get more holmium in the first place. So the point of dimensionals was mostly so we could make the UIV circuits, the dimensional processor mainframes, and this gets us UIV energy hatches, which we have a few of. We actually have a UIV energy hatch on Ultimate Material over here. A UIV 4A hatch for 134 million EU a tick. This is probably the single most power hungry block in multi-block we have in the base because we use a absolute monstrous amount of ultimate material. It looks like we have a very good stockpile right now, which is I'm very happy to see. But you do use a stupid amount of this, so if it fills up this drawer, which is at 295,000, I will be very happy, and it will be well worth the power cost and the resource cost because I am sure we are going to chew through that really quickly once some other things start turning on, especially once we get to start looking at T12, which uses an absolute ton of infinity ingots. We're going to be seeing a much greater demand on the ultimate material. I think we hit the 5,000 infinity ingot level limit I had set up, which is probably why I started stocking up, because it takes like 42 ultimate material to make a single infinity ingot. Although it might be a little bit better now because we have switched to the Furious Catalyst, because there's multiple ways to make infinity ingots. To make infinity ingots, there's a couple of different recipes. You need a dormant infinity compound ingot, and then either an infinity catalyst for a 1-to-1. 16, it's always a 1-to-1 from dormant to an actual infinity ingot. It just depends on what catalyst you use. So we're currently using the Furious Infinity Catalyst, and what this does is this only takes one Heart of the Universe to recycle, so it takes one to make it, and then one to recycle. So this makes it cheaper because if you use just the regular Infinity Catalyst, that is one Heart of the Universe for one ingot every time. However, if you use the Furious, you only use one for four, and if you use the Serene, you in this case, use 1 for 16. So it's worth doing. Obviously, it's totally worth doing using the higher tier catalysts to make infinity ingots. So over time, this will save us more and more resources as we move along. But we're still going to see a very large draw on our ultimate material, and that's just the way it is. Especially because you see Eternal Catalysts here, and this is where you see the Ultimate Material draw, and I believe in the Infinity Catalysts, yeah, you see all these more Eternal Catalysts. So this will save us tons and tons of Ultimate Material as well going forward. Lots and lots of materials, basically. So we also have over here, we added another assembly line. This one does the UV electric motors, because down over here, I haven't even finished talking about everything we've done. We also added ZPM emitters, ZPM field generators. We have LUV sensors down here, the energy modules. Moving down, we have LUV emitters, LUV field generators. This is UV electric pistons. This is something. I forget what this is supposed to be. Uh, hmm. Robot arms, maybe? Oh, pistons, probably. I'm not exactly sure. I'll have to double check to see what's supposed to be here. Anyway, we also have Universal Navigators on passive now as well. Universal Navigators was probably the most expensive item in terms of all the late tier, high tier micro miners. We were using absolute tons of them, and they are exceedingly slow, even how fast we were overclocking the various on-demand assembly lines. Like looking at the Universal Navigator here, this cost is obviously pretty high in terms of it does require a bunch of UV sensors and UHV processors and stuff. Which for this, even though like I mentioned we are using dimensionals, we have dimensionals. We're still using the matter. Excuse me. We're still using all the matter processor mainframes whenever possible in the various matter flavors of matter processor circuit. Again, because I am worried that if we run out of Holmium somehow, we will run out of dimensionals and the whole system will lock up, and then I'll have to change a bunch of recipes, and it won't be a good time. So fortunately for us, matter processors aren't nearly as expensive anymore. We're pretty good on Hearts of the Universe, especially since we have the good recipe for that through the hyperbolic as well. I haven't seen that lock up at all, so we've been doing really good on that. But these are exceedingly slow. We were running this at UIV and it was still 38 seconds for a single Universal Navigator. And if looking at the Ultimate Crafting, you use 2 in a tier 10, 1 in a tier 9, you use 2 in tier 11s as well. So these are very slow, very expensive, and they annoyed the hell out of me. So I put them on passive because I'm insane. So yeah, that's they're stocking up too now as well, and we're running these the slow. 150 seconds at UHV. The reason why I'm running this at UHV over, UIV or whatever, or UEV, is because if they're on passive, I'm okay with them being slower because it's running all the time, and we're not sending, tier 9s plus all the time. Especially now since we're not doing Warden Hearts as well. I think the biggest change over the week was actually switching the Warden Heart recipe. I think that had the biggest impact on the space, honestly. Specifically because of reducing the draw on tier 9 miners, which are expensive. Looking at the universal navigators and their the various components for that. So I think that's it for over here anyway. I did some more upgrades to ore processing in general. We're going to go down and over here, and I'm going to go show nether quartz in a moment. I added 3 more autoclaves, upgraded them all to UEV, and gave one of them the Omega Parallel Control Hatch. We actually unlocked this with access to excess holmium, as well as the UIV circuits. And the reason why we have so fucking many of these things is in order to make ancient debris, you get 1 stack of dense. In the advanced microverse projector, you get 16 ancient debris and a stack of dense nether quartz ore. And this converts to equivalent of 16 stacks of nether quartz ore. So we have a lot of that stuff. To the point where lots of the other autoclaves, like for holmium compound, because you turn holmium compound into holmium dust through an autoclave recipe, and this was getting stuck behind literally 100 million nether quartz at some points. Nether quartz dust at some points. So we have a lot of nether quartz. Just a couple days ago in my Discord, I posted earlier this week. I posted a clip, not a clip, a picture that we had 274 million nether quartz. Now we are up to I just checked it a little while ago. We are up to 745 million nether quartz. That is just under 200 million cubic meters worth of nether quartz block, 200 million nether quartz blocks, or 200 cubic meters, 200 million cubic meters, which is a lot of nether quartz. I can't get across to you how much fucking nether quartz that is. Actually, I switched the drive to I actually went and got ourselves the creative storage data specifically for the bulk item cell, because we had filled about a third of a 256 million a storage drive, and I was getting pretty nervous on that. I think a 256 can store like 2 billion items or something like that. It can store a lot. So it can store a lot of items. Or, 1 billion. I think I calculated it out. It was like a 1.4 billion items if it's just a single one. But we were getting pretty close to that. So, I don't know how large a bulk item cell is. I assume it's infinite of one item because it requires creative storage data. So, and you can only partition it for one item as well. So I assume that it's infinite or effectively infinite storage. So we're never going to use all that much nether quartz, especially since we don't really have any uses for it. I'm only processing it still because I think it's funny. I think it's really funny to have a really big number. I like big numbers, okay? It's very funny. Looks like the autoclave is finished up as well. I upgraded all these, overclocked the macerators as well down here. I overclocked just an absolute ton of machines. Gave these things better parallel hatches. Also overclocked the chemical baths to UV. Moved all the centrifuges to UV as well. So I've been doing a lot of upgrading ore processing just because we've been handing it massive, disgusting amounts of nether quartz ore mainly, but also with the various dense ores that we talked about earlier with the tier 4 miner. It's been processing that as well. As well as processing holmium is very slow in macerators. Even at LUV, it was taking about 30 seconds for 2 recipes for crushing the sensors and capacitors and various things like that. So that was pretty slow, and I was getting kind of annoyed about that, so I just decided to upgrade it. We can throw the power at it. UV power right now is nothing to us. And we did this because also a couple days ago, I went and picked up UIV rotor holders, which are the best rotor holders in the game. So our plasma turbines produce the maximum power possible for a plasma turbine, and that is 4.1 or 4.2 million EU per tick, or 2 amps UEV or UHV. So this is as much power as you'll get out of plasma turbine. I've only upgraded half of these things. I can upgrade the other half. I believe I still have the rotor holders. Yeah, I have the rotor holders. I just haven't messed with them yet because I wanted to go do something else. And we are now producing 460 million EU a tick. So I think we'll be okay now until creative energy. I'm not even sure if we'll need creative energy at this point, but we might do it anyway just so we can, give ridiculous amounts of. We can throw like 4,000 UAV energy hatches on crap if we feel like it. You know, that'll be neat. Do like one tick recipes on universal navigators or whatever. My tea is getting cold though. I've been talking for a while. Anyway, so or my power is in a much better position now. I don't know if we'll have. I don't like I said. I don't think we're gonna have to upgrade it again, moving forward into creative energy. But we'll see. I might upgrade them anyway, just to use the hatches that we have or the rotor holders that we have. So combined with the neutronium rotors and the UIV rotor holders, this is as much power as you can get out of a plasma turbine. Like I said, I also replaced all the neutronium rotors as well since I was pulling them all out anyway. They're all at like 75 or 74% durability, but I was like, I might as well replace them. Neutronium was free, so I just went ahead and replaced all of them just because I felt like it. I added a few more machines over here to factory floor too. We put some more things on passive, mainly the skull components for UEV and for the UEV electric motors. So there hasn't been too many changes over here either. I added a few more machines as well, putting some various components and stuff on passive. Dense plates stack less than they only stack to 7, I guess, rather than like the 64 or 16 of other things. So, um, yeah, we have a. I think let's see. I don't know if there's too many other things. I'm getting pretty burned out on Monifactory. This endgame is really just an actual huge, disgusting slog. It really is quite atrocious in terms of resources expenditure and how long it takes for anything to happen. And while I think attempting to use more, maybe attempting to put more microverse projectors would help, the way I have my passive system working for them, I don't think it would really change anything. So it's less about the speed of the microminers and how slow the recipes themselves take to make, and more of just how fucking many of them it takes. It looks like I'm gonna have to actually overclock UHP IC wafers. It's been a significant slowdown over the last week, and I've been hoping it was just gonna kind of stumble along. However, it looks like that is not the case. We do have a UHV line over here. I might rip. I might rip this whole line out and just do it for UEV or something like that, just because you don't lose. So most of the time when you overclock recipes in GregTech, I guess we can go ahead and take a look at here. We'll look at dense Nequata plates. So when you can see that the total EU cost by overclocking it doubles the EU cost, but multiplies the energy rate by 4 times. And GregTech recipes work by completing a certain amount of energy per item rather than time per item. So this effective by increasing the rate of power draw by 4 times, that would theoretically increase the recipe speed by 4 times. However, by doubling the total amount of recipe for energy for a recipe, it's actually effectively only twice as fast. However, LCRs do not do that. Let's look here. We looked at UHPIC wafers, right? So in a large chemical reactor, it's perfect overclocks. So it's 4 times the power draw, but it doesn't increase the total amount of power required for a recipe. So if anything is worth doing in a chemical reactor, it's probably worth doing in a large chemical reactor. Just because for those really high-end recipes that you want to overclock a lot, you literally can save hundreds of millions of EU. So just by regular, not shifting right now, so this is just regular overclocks running at ZPM, it would be about 15 seconds. However, if we do perfect overclocks, you can see it 4 times the rate, but the total power stays the same. So if we were to push this to say UEV, it would push it to 2 ticks. Whereas if it was just like a regular UEV reactor or UEV chemical reactor, it would still be 3.7 for much greater power cost in total. So yeah, so I'm gonna have to move the UHPIC wafers to a higher voltage tier, or maybe I'll just rip this whole thing out and just put it up at like UHV or probably UHV. We can afford that kind of power cost, and I can quickly just replace all the turbines with the UAVs, and I think that will be like closer to like a total of 700 million EU tick. So we've reached the stage where we can just throw power at the problem and just kind of forget about it, which will be nice. All right. I don't think there's too much else. Oh, I mean, uh, we added a wire factory over here. Hold on, guys. Sorry, I just woke up a little while ago, so I do need more tea. This milk tea mix is really good. I really like it. Anyway, so we added a wire factory on passive. I don't think this material press here, this is for foils. I don't think this was here last week, though it might have been. I don't remember. We added this because the various circuit boards that we use a lot of absolutely chew through foil. And while the IV passive array is pretty good for most things, for things we have a really, really high demand of, it's not good enough, unfortunately. Like, double tungsten carbide plates here. We're going to have to set up probably a bender for that as well, because this is just slow. However, for like 99% of all the resources and the various things throughout the base, it's good enough. There's just a few things every now and then that we just use absolute monstrous amounts of, and we need more of them than IV can provide. And rather than attempting to rebuild all of this at ZPM or whatever, it's worth just setting up a few multi-blocks for those specific resources that we might need ahead of time. Or we might need at any one point in time. So, looks like we might have to do that for, double tungsten carbide plates. Maybe a few more over here. Oh yeah, like double cryobulus plates. All of this stuff seems to be mostly okay. We can take a look at over here. That's probably mostly okay as well. You can just look at all these things that run 24/7, and Durian plates is fine. Anyway, so we'll have to come back over here and take a look. Normally we've been figuring out which ones it is by attempting to craft stuff and realizing we have zero of it, or realizing something has stopped working and we go and figure out why, and it's like, oh, because X has run out or whatever. So, I think that's probably okay for now. If we go over and look at netherite now, this got some upgrades mostly. Not like I added another molecular assembler for diamond lattices. This is the number one draw of diamonds in the base by far. You use a bunch of those diamond lattices per activated netherite ingot, and I'm curious, how much activated netherite do we have? We have 150,000. I'm curious how much ancient debris. Apparently, it is being consumed somewhere. Uh, hmm. Netherite scrap, maybe? I don't know. Because I do know that miner was still endlessly crafting those T4s. At least it was when I got on. I guess it figured itself out. Cool. Anyway, oh, you know what? I bet it's at 49,000 because I bet the level emitter just turned off. Because I set up the level emitter on the microverse projector over here for netherite ingots finally. For a while, yeah, it just turned off. But when I got on, like 10 seconds before I started recording, I watched it create a T4 miner, and I was concerned about that because I was worried it was running for like the last 3 days. I mean, I was gonna get on for 47 billion nether quartz or something. It looks like it's fine. The reason why I ended up level emitting on the activated netherite rather than one of the netherite precursors, like the various ancient debris. Like if we look at the ancient debris, you have the crushed and stuff. Then it goes to purified, refined, purified, impure dust, purified dust, then processed ancient dust, and then scrap. The reason why I wasn't a level emitting off any of these things, any of these precursors, was because every time we upgrade it, whatever the bottleneck is changes, and then I come back the next day later and realize I have 47 million nether quartz ore to process. Actually, that's a lie. One time I got on for 70 million nether quartz to process, 90 million dust to process, and 24 million purified dust to sift, or purified ore to sift. So I've gotten on and literally had a few hundred million nether quartz ore to process. So I finally just got sick of attempting. I've switched this level emitter like 8 times. I had to switch it like every 2 days to something else, and it was effectively like just turn off now. And then whenever I upgraded it again, it would by the time it would normally turn on for that one thing again, I would have upgraded it, and a new bottleneck appears, and that's not worth level emitting anymore. So I just broke down and did ingots. 150,000 to 120,000 ingots is more than enough for us. Our draw is much slower now, and especially with how much faster netherite is, especially since we've been throwing power at the problem. When we started it, UV power was pretty expensive for us. UHV, EV power was a pretty expensive for us. Not the case anymore. The only kind of power voltages we really have to think about at this stage are UIV and maybe UEV. UV and UHV is literally nothing. Like I upgraded a bunch of like all the thermal centrifuges to UV, for example, and it was like 2 million EU a tick, which 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago would have been a lot. However, now is like, oh, that's it? Okay, sure, that's like chump change for us. So we're doing it so we can just throw power at the problem for that. So I'm not really concerned about netherite being slow because for a while it was the slowest thing in the base, and that was a very large bottleneck for many, many processes. But by throwing UV energy hatches and UHV energy hatches on this stuff, a lot of these things are much, much faster, and it's been pretty good. Though it looks like, yeah, because it ran out of ancient debris because it capped out on ingots. So Netherite doesn't really need any upgrades. Terbium never really needed any upgrades from when it was originally built. You don't really need that much terbium going forward. It's basically used as the magnetic rod, the polarized rod for higher tier motors. For UIV, UHV, and UEV motors, and that's really all it's used in. It doesn't really get used in anything else except for the long rounds, so you don't really have a huge draw on those motors, not anywhere near something like netherite, for instance. And netherite is the superconductor for UEV. So, uh, yeah, Terbium never really needed any upgrades. Oh, we also built another bridge over the last week while waiting for more stuff. This is the last bridge we'll build, I think. I don't think there's going to be any more. I think base expansion is probably pretty much over at this stage. I don't know if there's going to be any. I don't. Looking forward, I haven't really seen any more massive multi-blocks we have to build for chest. It's mostly just sending. I think we have something like 40 T12 microminers we have to send for chest at least. I know you need 8 for just the monic platings alone, and there's a lot of platings you have to do. So I guess we'll go ahead. Now is a good enough time as any to take a look at Quantum Chest. So we have subatomic digital assemblers. Those are fine. We have the creative storage datas. We can make that. That's pretty easy. We have the creative energy data, which we'll have to do soon. We don't have those yet. UIV robot arms we can actually technically do since we have dimensionals. We can finally start working on these, so these aren't so bad, especially since we have excess holmium and we have else done. So we're pretty good on that, for example. So all these UIV components we can do. UIV field generators might be a little bit of a push, it seems like. Let's see. Nope, infinity and UIV circuits. So we are good on that as well. Looks like the big thing is probably going to be the various infinity tools, but it looks like these aren't even that bad themselves either. These are going to be a little bit of a nested craft probably, but yeah, I don't see anything here that would be particularly expensive for us. That would require really the cost right now isn't like how many resources it costs, but how many microminers am I going to have to send for special resources. Field stabilized omnic pulsar compounds. These aren't going to be too bad either. They're going to be a little bit pricey in terms of holmium and else, but other than that, it should be generally okay. We're looking at it looks like the platings are probably going to be the big ones here. And let's see, we're going to need some infinity plates, which we have plenty of infinitium at this stage, so that'll be fine. With the elementally infused omnic plates, we have all of these components on passive. I recently did that. I put iridium neutron reflectors on passive. These should have been much, much faster and on demand. I think the problem is I just had there, because we are running this at, it's a UIV, or no, it's actually a UXV assembler, because I gave that one a UIV energy hatch as well. Not having the dimensional mainframes was the number one bottleneck we had or the only bottleneck we had in UIV energy hatches. So I upgraded this thing's. It was originally an elite. No, it was a master parallel hatch, I think. It was the second one you get. We had yeah, the master parallel hatch in this one, and I just stuffed it with an extra super parallel hatch. We're not going to be running 256 recipes at the same time for pretty much anything. But it should be, if I do give it a bunch of, like, say, one thing or whatever, I can just do that for free. It was running at UXV. There's no UXV energy hatches. It goes from UIV to max. But you do have a UXV interim voltage. And that is, uh, I guess, ultra extreme voltage or something like that instead of all, because normally it would be, IV, LUV, but ULV is already a voltage. So I guess it's, whatever. but we only have one more voltage tier left, and that would be max. If we look at, so we have right now we're at UIV energy hatch, and the next one is the max energy hatch, which requires monic stuff. We're basically gonna need lots of monium is the next material going forward, and monium is insane. So it takes a stack of infinity ingots, 4 creation data, a tier 12 miner for just a stack of ingots, and there is no other way of getting it. And we're gonna need quite a lot of this stuff going forward. Especially, I think you need it. We need it for like monic. Let's see, like monic circuit boards. You need 2 monium plates for that. Everything else in here is effectively free or pretty cheap for us. I guess the dimensional circuit boards are not that cheap, but we can do them. Monic processing units is more monium. This specifically isn't too bad because you get 3 more. That's 3 more monium ingots for a processor. Then you get 2 processors for holmium stuff. Contained singularity requires more monium. So we're gonna have to send, I imagine, I don't know how many actually, how many T12 miners we're gonna have to send for Monium. We might not, we probably won't even put any of the Monium stuff on passive just because of how fucking expensive T12 miners are, and all that stuff is gonna have to be done on demand. This will be the last circuit we do, and it looks like we actually probably aren't too far away from doing that. However, let's see, we have timeless monic heavy plating, which requires a disgusting amount of monium as well as all the other platings. And then we use that to make the causality exempt monic heavy platings, and you use all this stuff. So we're probably, looking at this recipe actually, we're probably not too far away from completing the pack. Which I'm very happy about. I really am ready to be done. In terms of playtime between all 3 of us, because there are 3 people who play on this server, there's myself, Cosmic, and one other, we have a combined total of 850 hours. I myself have 600. Let's see. We'll take a look. Time played is 25.67 days. Let me quickly just pull up my phone and I'll do the math for you for that. 25.67. That is 616 hours in Monifactory, personally. And I would like to ask you guys a question. If you guys go on your Steam profile and like your library or whatever, how many games do you have that you have 600 hours in? How many? I mean, I play Helldivers and I have about 600 hours in that, and I've been playing that almost since launch, Helldivers 2, and I'm pretty good in that one. I'm insanely good at Ultra Kill, which I might stream at some point because that game's a lot of fun. And I have less than 500 hours in that. I played, I think I have, there's probably less than 5 games on my Steam library that I have more than 600 hours in. I'd have to check. But, and I'm chronically online. I've been playing video games my whole life pretty much. So 600 hours in a single pack truly is a ridiculous amount of time. It really, really is. And I am really ready to be done. I want to go do something else. But we're not quite there yet. And I really do want chest. Part of me wants to just it's fine, it's whatever, just go do something else. But I part of Greg Tech is part of completing it isn't just about being able to build the systems, because I think anyone can build the systems. If you really want to, you can learn how to build the base, you can learn how to do it. The one thing I don't think you can learn, maybe, or maybe you can, is the endurance and the willingness to be here for 600 hours, 700 hours, to actually do it. And that's what I want to do. I want to actually do it. And the other thing is, I do want to play GTNH at some point, Greg Tech New Horizons. But we'd spend I'd spend literally years of my life playing. If I wanted to get Stargate, which I don't, I'll set a much closer to home goal, I think, for my first time playing GTNH. But attempting to get Stargate would take me literally years and thousands of hours. And my time in Mining Factory has told me that I am not really ready for that kind of grind yet. I don't know if I ever really will be. I do want to do something different, and if we do play GTNH at some point or another, it will not be done like in Money Factory, like in a single sitting. It will be done over years and years, and I may take breaks or restart again or whatever. I don't think I'll ever complete GTNH at any one point in my life, but who knows? We'll see. But yeah, we next up will probably be antimatter chemistry, though cabin, because Create 6 looks really, really cool. Cabin looks like it'll be a lot of fun. But I don't, antimatter chemistry will be much shorter, especially since Cosmic will be playing with that, and I spent 288 hours in antimatter chemistry the last time. So between the two of us, I'm sure we'll probably spend more combined, but less like real life time, because I think it took me like 3 months to beat antimatter chemistry. But yeah, here we are. About 5 months into Monifactory and 600 hours, and we are reaching the end. We're not too far, though I do say this every week and every day. I think it's partially a way of coping with myself that just around the corner, like Fusion's just like 10 more years, we swear, 10 more years. But we are actually like going through the recipe with you guys just now makes me realize we are a lot closer than I think we think. It looks like Monium is the last big step, which would need tier 12 miners, which I guess we can go ahead and take a look and see what the recipe for that is. And that's a bunch of Hadal warp engines. That's the extra dimensional navigators, which are uh, quite expensive. But we can do, once we set up all the various UIV things and UAV components, I think we'll be pretty good. The problem is this is going to require an upgrade to our assembly lines, and our assembly lines continually break. Every now and then I have to come over here and I have to fix them. They just stop working. I want to rebuild these things. I actually just straight up disconnected one of them because I just couldn't get it to fucking work properly. So I eventually am going to try and replace these things with the dimensional super assembler. Even this is much larger, and even though the problem we have with assembly lines is less of needing to do a bunch of the same recipe really quickly, it's mostly about doing a wide variety of different recipes in parallel, and that's not how GregTech parallel machines work. So if I were to set this up, what I'd want to do is try and get multiple in here. I'm gonna like try and see if I can get four in here. I can probably get two in here. It's a 9 by 9 by whatever, a long column. So I'd have to put them vertically and build them underneath, which would be okay because there's actually a giant sinkhole under here. I just covered under it. I just paved over it when setting up the assembly lines. So I won't have to dig out tons and tons of space for these dimensional super assemblers, but I don't know if we have like the horizontal surface area here. I would probably really be willing to extend the whole area that way so I can get more in. I do want more than three, for sure. Just because I do want to do more recipes simultaneously. And the other nice thing about them is, unlike regular assembly lines, which require multiple ULV input buses, and you have to fill all of them up, dimensional super assemblers don't work that way. You can just stuff everything in a single bus, so it should hopefully prevent the super assemblers from breaking nearly as often if you only have to feed one inventory with the items to get them to do a craft, rather than a bunch of them and fluids and a bunch of other crap. So it would be more like the assembler multi-block, which I haven't had any problems with, or I've had like 2 or 3 problems with, but it mostly had to do with maybe like some conflicting recipes or something like that. I haven't really seen that problem happen in a while. I think it was mostly with motors. And we put a ton of motors on passive. I think we've put most of the motors that we would have done in the assembly line or done in the assembler on passive at this stage. So, um, yeah. So this is gonna need an upgrade, and I think switching all these out for the dimensional super ass will probably be the last major upgrade of the base. And then after that, it'll just break down to be running 500 miners. 500 micro miners. Ah, so we're getting pretty close. And I should probably, that's probably about it, I think. I don't think there's been too much other stuff here. Like I said, it's been a slower week. I have been, oh wait, no wait, this was here last week, wasn't it? This trophy hall. Yeah, it was. Anyway, so I do want to go ahead and mention again that I have, like I said at the beginning, I did some streams last week, and I will probably stream again. Well, I'll almost certainly stream again in the upcoming week. As for a schedule, I don't have a schedule. I'll stream whenever I feel like it, whenever I want to have fun on GregTech. If you want to get updates for that, you can join my Discord. The description is in the link is in the description below. I will attempt to remember to put a post on the YouTube community page. Uh, just so and I don't know if you guys get notifications for that though. I don't know how community posts work in terms of notifications. So if you want a better chance of being notified when the streams happen, like I said, join the Discord. They generally happen around 2 p.m. PST. I will not be streaming today. I do not feel like playing more modded Minecraft right now. I want to go play something else. So I will see you guys. Hope you guys have had a good week. My week's been pretty okay. Like I said, I've been getting burned out on Monifactory, so that kind of sucks. But streaming was fun. I'm glad I got all that stuff working. That was a good time. I hope you guys have had a good week, and I hope you guys have a good upcoming week, and I will see you all again next week.